Hello. So I invited Aaron Gomez to come talk on the Kindness podcast because I followed his career and he's a small business owner in San Luis Obispo. Him and his brother run the Gold Concept, and they're really amazing artisans that are producing really high quality stuff, and they are eco conscious. They are respectful of all living things, especially the workers and artisans that are making their jewelry. And then Aaron's transitioned into a role being a leader as a city council member. I invited him onto the podcast because I wanted to have him speak to how to be kind to the environment. And he ended up speaking a lot about how to be kind to yourself and to those around you. So it's kind of funny. The more people I ask to speak about kindness, I want them to speak about something in particular. But the thing that everyone seems to come back to is it's not going to work unless you're kind to yourself. So you can't really be a good partner or parent or neighbor or steward to the earth if you don't take care of yourself. So this is an amazing talk. Aaron has really good picks for both books and movies if you're interested in learning more. I really respect and admire Aaron for the way that he handles himself in his business and in his personal life. And he has some amazing tips on how to handle yourself in a way that's respectful and that you'll be proud of. So he talks about how to deal with people on social media, and his advice is to not get involved in the emotional back and forth and to stick to the facts when you're talking about issues. And I think that is really wonderful advice. Also, he talks about intuition being so important and how to fine tune your intuition is to be still, be quiet, meditate, go for walks in nature, and your intuition is going to steer you right in your life. And I'm really excited for you to hear this talk with Aaron Gomez. Here we go. Hi guys, I'm so excited to talk about my beloved dentist, Dr. Dan Kopp. He runs Kopp Dental Group, downtown San Luis Obispo, and I want to tell you 3 reasons why I love him. I want to tell you what brought me to his office. It was probably like 10 years ago. I had been having horrible pain from my dental work. I went to a dentist and I'd go in. I would get needles in my gums. That was extremely painful. They would be drilling on me and I'd be digging my fingers into the chair and crying with tears down my face. And he explained to me that my nerves were just larger than most people, so that it was going to be really painful for me. And then afterwards, I would get Vicodin and codeine, and it did literally nothing for the pain. It hurt so bad. I couldn't work after. I'd usually just go home and lay in bed for a day or two and try and recover from it. And it was just nauseating, just getting the nerve to go to the dentist. And I was getting tired of it. So I wrote on Facebook, wondering if there was a better way. And I said, who has a dentist they love? And people said, Dr. Kopp, you got to see Dr. Kopp. He's lovely. So I went to his office. They put nitrous on my nose. They put numbing agent, did the little shot that I didn't notice, and worked on my teeth. I got done. I left the office and I didn't need anything, no Advil, no pain. So basically, I went from having pretty much panic attacks from dental visits and pain level of 8 or 9 down to a pain level of 0. And I feel so lucky to be able to have him as my dentist. It's really, really changed my life. And I look forward to going to get dental work done now. But like they say on Reading Rainbow, you don't have to take my word for it. He's actually won New Times Best of Dentist in SLO County several times. So he is really well loved. And in addition to him being a caring and capable dentist, he's also volunteer for this organization, Give Kids a Smile, and he volunteers his time for kids in our community that have a need for dental work, but no access. So thank you so much for sponsoring this Erin Gomez episode, Dr. Kopp. I know you're a big fan of Erin, and Erin's a big fan of yours, and I'm a fan of both of yours. So thank you so much. And your staff, I have to say, also is amazing. They go out of their way to work with my insurance and be warm when I come into the office. And I've loved all of your dental hygienists. Love, love, love you guys. Okay, here comes the episode with Erin. Bye. Enjoy. Hey, Erin. Thanks for being here today. I haven't seen you in a really long time, but I've seen your signs all over San Luis Obispo a couple of years ago in my parents' neighborhood. They live by Laguna Lake. Erin Gomez and Heidi Harmon. And I was so thrilled to see you guys get elected. So you were elected to City Council in 2016 in San Luis Obispo, and that time has gone by really fast. You decided to run because you were passionate about sustainability and you were concerned about the overconsumption. And since taking office, you and Heidi and the other leaders have come up with this plan for carbon neutrality by 2035, which is incredibly exciting. It's like a less time away than we went to high school. It's coming up, and I'm really thrilled to see what you guys have put together this year. I want to do everything I can to support you guys and do this. I felt like I was watching the news, and it was 2017, the Paris Agreement. Our leadership pulled out, and I felt really devastated and confused about that. And my mom reminded me, Claire, you need to think global and act local. And maybe you can't change his mind, but the good thing is the tide of news stories was all these cities like us and SLO were saying, that doesn't represent us. We are going to continue with this and more aggressive than ever. Yeah. So that was really exciting. And I want you to help all the listeners unleash their superpowers in saving the earth and help us live our best lives. So do you want to talk about carbon neutrality and what that is and what it means for us right now?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So the carbon neutrality goal that we set up, it's basically how it sounds, is literally being a city that you are able to sequester or not emit carbon in the first place beyond, so it has to be a 1-for-1. If you emit, say, 2 parts of carbon, you have to then be able to sequester 2 parts of carbon. That's the neutrality point. Our biggest issue in the city of San Luis Obispo is transportation. That's our biggest carbon emitter. So with the 2035 goal, it basically sets that timeline up, and now staff is in the process with consultants to figure out, okay, what does that actually look like in the sense of how do we reduce, car traffic? How do we switch to electric vehicles? How do we switch to electrification of houses? There's a lot of these big ticket items in that conversation. And then the biggest one that I think nobody's been able to get to that point of knowing, but they're hoping the ability of sequestration over the next, obviously, decade or so evolves enough either through some sort of technology or, there's also carbon farming can be done as far as actual sequestration through farm practices, and implementing enough of those to remove the rest of it, because there's no way that we'll ever get to that point of just zero emissions. So we have to figure out the sequestration portion of it. Mm-hmm. But it all starts with understanding the problem. That's just kind of the huge educational outreach process that we all have to go through.
I think if you came across a website, it might be mamaeco.com, and she had the quiz to put in your daily routine and how many earths we need to sustain that lifestyle, and I was horrified. I needed 7.2 earths to maintain me driving from Templeton to SLO, and it really upset me. So I started doing little things like stop throwing away Ziploc bags, the girls' lunches and stuff like that, and it's still not where it should be, but it's getting reduced. And looking in the parking lot here where I work, I see we have 3 Teslas here. I like seeing that. So how's it going? You guys have an event tonight. You've been getting good support, and
Yeah, I mean, the movement is growing. We switched to a company called, or an organization called Monterey Bay Clean Power.
Right.
So through that, that's community choice energy, which allows you to have a carbon neutral, electrical grid. So that by itself is obviously huge. So then it's a matter of getting everybody to go from, driving their gasoline vehicles to electric vehicles, because then you can charge those vehicles on a carbon neutral grid. So that's a huge kind of stepping stone for us, as well as all the other cities and counties that are switching to that type of power. And it also allows kind of incentives for the public from that entity to help, make those switches both within your home and through transportation.
I love the incentivizing. Do you want to talk about what led you to this point in your life to be on city council? A little quick summary of your career in life, what got you here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a circuitous route. It was not anything that was ever on my radar as far as being a politician. I was raised a normal kid on the Central Coast. I think my mom actually tried to raise us as vegetarian, but that didn't work out. I think when we were early, a cousin or an uncle or something, fed us a hamburger, and that was kind of the end of that goal. But then early on, when I was, 19, 20, I actually had a girlfriend that passed away, and it kind of shifted my mindset on, what's important in life and who do I want to be in this life, and, kind of caused me to travel abroad, just kind of out of that soul searching mission of, what is life like outside of where I live? Central Coast is great, but it's it's one of those places that I would call kind of a bubble community. And I think that probably goes for almost all communities. If that's the only place that you stay, it's the only world that you know, but there's a much broader array of perspectives out there. And traveling abroad was one of those educations to me that showed me how different other cultures are, and the happiness and the dismay that comes out of those cultures. And, it's in America, we have created an atmosphere that is very comfortable, but I don't think it's creating a lot of joy and happiness. Versus, I traveled to Thailand, was one of my first places abroad, and the poverty level is obviously much higher, and the work is significantly harder, at least at that time when I was there. But you saw people that were very, appeared to be enjoying their lives, even though they lived a much harder life in comparison to what we did. And I think it's, more of the spiritual practice that's kind of built into their societies. So it was kind of through that really got me involved in wanting to pursue sustainability, because I was also got really interested in Buddhism at the time and Taoism, kind of the Eastern philosophies. And from that, I went to being a vegetarian, and it also caused me to start looking into, well, what are the farming practices that we're using? That's why I kind of quit meat. And then you're like, well, what about the farming practices just for our normal food? You start to see how unsustainable a lot of our systems are. And you can kind of trace it back to the Industrial Revolution. We went really into efficiency, but we kind of lost this whole connection to what the land was actually providing for us. It's very cyclical, and we removed that cycle in order to create efficiency. And I think we're now understanding the repercussions to eliminating that kind of the connection that we have and the way that nature works. Like, you have to go with those cycles of nature, or you're not going to create a great product. And that's what we have basically created for most of our, large scale items. And that translated into, I went into woodworking and wanted to be a sustainable woodworker. And then I kind of transitioned from that to my parents' business that was, making jewelry, because they needed a jeweler at night. And I was like, well, can I also translate this idea of sustainability into making jewelry? And what do I need to do that? Ethically sourcing, where you get your gems, where you get, how you can use as little of the mining process as possible, because that's extremely environmentally hazardous from how much dirt you're going to end up moving, how much carbon you're emitting to get that dirt just to get some gold out of the ground or some gems out of the ground that really are not important to society. It's only important to industry.
You don't want to be selling blood diamonds and destroying people on the other side of the world. You want people getting engaged to have a happy time and feel good about their purchases.
And jewelry is one of the, it's an age-old art, so it's a beautiful art. But again, it's like kind of we've tried to take it to such a far degree that we remove the art of it just to get the precious gems, so we can make more money. And it's like you lose what it was ever intended to do in the first place. Not that I figured it out completely, but it's always something that I strive to do. If we're going to do something, can we do it in the most conscious and sustainable way?
And then you saw an opening at the city council and said, I'm going to go for it and put my hat in the ring. And you got a lot of support from people your age, different generations in the community, and you got in and things are going well. I see you and Heidi and Andy and everyone on social media riding your bikes and encouraging healthy lifestyles, being eco-warriors. I see Heidi everywhere. Mm-hmm. You're close to Heidi, I bet. I wanted to ask you, you have to be really well-read to be speaking about all these things. Are there things you've come across, not just as reference books that have made you more intelligent in discussing things, but things that have spoken to your heart that you want to recommend that people read? Movies for people to watch. I feel like documentaries are my favorite genre, and I would love to hear what's sparked your passion on all this.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I can actually make jewelry work while I'm listening to these books. So it's one of those things it's made it very easy to consume a lot of information in a shorter amount of time versus if I were to try and read on top of city council where you read a ton. It would make it difficult to do the same amount. So I'm very thankful for Audible books. But like some of the books, I wrote them down when I was pondering this question because there's so many. I was just kind of looking back through my library. And I think some of the most transformative ones, the first book that I read that I actually read prior to audiobook was Siddhartha. And that's what really got me into the idea of Buddhism, or looking into the philosophy of Buddhism. And it just kind of snowballed from there. Got into looking at Dalai Lama's stuff, like what he's written. And I mean, he's just his concepts are phenomenal, and everything he writes, I enjoy reading. Then a book that I read recently was a book with Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. They wrote a book together. That's called The Book of Joy. And I think it's such a intriguing book for our time because especially in the Western world, that seems to be something that we lose. We always talk about happiness, but happiness is somewhat of a fleeting emotion versus joy is something that you can experience and be a part of. Even in sadness, you can still have joy in the background of that. And I think it's far more sustainable of an emotion and a way of being. And so to listen to these two individuals who've been through literally some of the hardest things any one person can go through and have them speak to that it's just one of those books that I think it's a must read.
Is this them, their voices on the audiobook?
No, it's not their voices, I don't think.
I feel like
the Dalai Lama you can't really understand him very well when he speaks, but when people speak on his behalf, it makes it far more easier to listen to.
It kind of took me back now that I'm thinking about it. I saw a documentary. It might have been 10 questions for Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
But he has this really beautiful, unique voice, and I was kind of curious about that. And I have happily added Desmond Tutu's children's books to our girls' library. Nice. I love his writing.
Yeah, he's awesome. Like the whole list of things that I have, like there's a book called Quiet that was really interesting. It's called The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. Um, and for me, as an introvert in a world that is very extrovert focused, especially politics, it's one of those books that gives you, if you are an introvert, kind of gives you a little more confidence to be yourself, because there's a lot of power in that, and you know, not trying to fit into a world that you may not feel as comfortable in, but really accepting your introvertness and, you know, utilizing it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Within the environmental world, there's a really good book called Drawdown. It's the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming by Paul Hawking.
I don't know that one.
And it literally goes through a list of, I don't even know how many touches on, but where everything equates from a carbon reduction model. He actually went through the scientific data. If we were to implement, you know, say rooftop solar, how effective would it be? How much would it cost the world? And how much would we need to create the carbon reduction? And where does it rate on this scale of most effective things to do to remove carbon from our atmosphere? And so it touches on literally everything from if you don't eat meat to rooftop solar to, you know, what wind power does, electric vehicles, blah, blah, blah. So, but because it's so scientific based, it removes the political debate, and it's just, here's the numbers, here's how you be effective, and here's how you implement it. I mean, I could obviously go on. There's several of them. Books called Die Wise. There's the autobiography of the Tibetan monk. A couple documentaries that I think are very fitting right now. Living in the Future's Past, which is one that Jeff Bridges did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a link between humans and what we've evolved into, the psychology behind it, and the effect that we've had on our planet. And it's kind of addressing the fact that humanity has become a superorganism in how we function. Yet we see ourselves as being very individual. So we don't recognize that we're part of a much larger process and much larger organism to a certain extent. And we're still connected to this system. But this system, although it is a great way of producing energy and allowing people to live, it's not producing, you know, a functional individual life, and that's no longer sustainable from how we are utilizing that energy extraction, everything from farming to, you know, oil. And then he has some really good closing lines in that of just literally following your own intuition and following what brings you kind of happiness and joy, and go with that and utilize that as the key to also changing the world as a whole and how we, you know, engage with the system itself.
I feel so excited. Like I want to start book clubs and movie watching clubs. It's good. I was wondering, putting yourself out there to be a leader in the local government, have you received criticism anonymously or face to face? And if so, how do you handle it?
I have received criticism both anonymously and face to face. Yeah, being in the political sphere, you get a very interesting insight into human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a, you know, psychological experiment, because you get to see direct reactions to either things you have done or even things that people perceive that you have done. And I've found that often it's not so much about me, it's just their reaction to something going on in either their own lives or you know, how discontent they are with, you know, the overall political process. So I try my best not to take any of it very personal, but it took, I would say, about 1.5 years to find comfort in this role and to not take that stuff personal. But I think there's no other way. If you do take it too personal, then being in politics just should not be in your your things to do.
Does someone putting something on social media even deserve a response, or can you just leave the comment be and not?
It depends on where it's coming from. If it's just an attack for the sake of being an attack, I don't care to respond. I spend a lot of time on sites like Nextdoor and somewhat on Facebook. I saw it a lot more on Nextdoor, especially around election time.
Mm-hmm.
People just putting out either stuff that they didn't understand, they were misinformed on, or they were truly trying to misinform the public because they knew better, but they just didn't want a specific outcome, so they're putting bad information out there. Those I do respond to, but from a very data-oriented, like, here's the rules, or here's how that vote actually went, here's the data behind it. If you dislike it, that's fine. Here's the people to contact. You're more than welcome to have a conversation with me. But I never get into the emotional back and forth. I try and stay very focused on the data.
I love that. I think that's a very healthy way to communicate. And I feel like I made some mistakes in my personal life when the election happened in 2016 with people that I was acquaintance with, and neighbors or in-laws, and I just stopped and reflected and said, this isn't what I want my daughters to see, so I want to hear what you were. You speak of future generations, and you're child-free right now, but this is something that you look for, and I am so thankful as a mother that you're doing this for my girls and for all of our kids and future generations. And on the other side, I was wondering if anyone stopped to thank you for what you're doing and the time you're putting into making the world a better place. Does anyone stop you and thank you to your face or write you a thank you note, or is it kind of just more negative coming in?
There's definitely more negative than positive, but when you do get positive responses, they obviously carry a lot more weight, and you can feel the genuine care. And so we do have a community that is thankful. Unfortunately, I think it's one of those parts of humanity that we feel the need to express more negativity than we do positivity for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can change that.
Yeah, I've gotten into the habit of writing thank you notes as much as I can, and it's something that people maybe our age don't do very much, but I, at least, if not every day, every few days I'm writing thank you notes to someone in my life that I appreciate. I want them to know it, so I get a lot of joy out of doing that. So if anyone is thankful for their leadership, Aaron, Heidi, you should totally write a thank you note. I was going to bring up that I was a classmate of yours, and I've known you since junior high, 7th grade.
Uh-huh.
And I remember being in art class with you, and you were never mean to anyone, and you had this really cute personality, and you had this little t-shirt with the tuxedo print on it, and I was like, Aaron is so cool. And usually the cool kids are intimidating, and I just feel like, I don't know if it's just the vibes you're putting out or if you really were comfortable in your skin and comfortable with who you are. I hope my daughters are like this, but I was curious if anyone out there listening is maybe younger and trying to find their people or trying to be okay with themselves and comfortable in the world. Do you have any advice for them?
It's a tough one as youth. I mean, just even as comfortable as I may have thought I was at the time, looking back on it, I was actually probably thoroughly uncomfortable. But it's only in hindsight that you kind of realize that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I really became comfortable in my own skin until my 30s. Mm-hmm. And that's just because of life experience. But I think as a youth, it's one of those, we take life probably too seriously with very little information for life experience. And I think taking that back a notch and understanding that there is a much bigger world out there And I guarantee if you as an individual are feeling it, so are a lot of other people, whether that's sadness, happiness, uncomfort, discomfort. Somebody says something that really bothers you. Um, we're not alone in that experience.
It's actually universal, and maybe the teachers are having anxiety about their day or struggling. Tough.
Yeah.
Finding your way home.
Yeah, I think finding as many forms of self-expression as possible is a great mechanism, and that's something that really worked for me as a kid. I was just really into alternative sports as far as snowboarding or wakeboarding or skateboarding, and those were ways that as somebody that probably did not feel as comfortable expressing themselves verbally, I could through those types of endeavors. So, whether or not that's painting or reading or, you don't want to be around your friends, don't be around your friends.
I was curious, did you have any actionable tips you wanted to share with people, how they can be kind to either the earth or to their fellow humans and neighbors?
Kindness is one of the, as cliche as it sounds, like, treat others as you would, want to be treated. It's true, as long as you don't have any deep-seated, self-hatred in which you don't want to be treated well. But hopefully that's a smaller segment of the world. But I think really treating yourself that way probably is the best endeavor, because if you treat yourself with that type of self-care and joy and happiness, you'll just automatically exude that to others. Oftentimes, I think we go too far and try and push all of that on others, and we kind of deplete that self-love, which is absolutely necessary. Especially now, there's just a lot of energy that is, I would say, is fairly chaotic because of so much turmoil. And there's some sayings that I've seen, and it's based around, starting with that self-care. And if you can take care of yourself and love yourself, then you can expand that out to your household. And when you can love your household, then you can expand that out to your neighborhood. When you can love your neighborhood, you can expand that out to your city. So it's really working from the internal out. And then it just becomes a way of life.
Yeah, that's really well said. If there's any people interested in going into politics or people already in politics that are super into what you're doing and want to find you, locals, anyone out there wants to find you, how do they find you?
You could do it through my shop, which is goldconcept.com, or you could just go to the city website and got my picture up there and all my contact information, which is slowcity.org.
Okay. Well, thanks for everything. Do you have anything that I missed that you really wanted to talk about as far as making kindness your trademark and living your best life so that people around you can live their best life?
Yeah, I would say utilizing your intuition to the best extent possible is more important than ever, versus relying on kind of the outside influences that I feel kind of develop the system that we now live in. And a good way to develop your intuition is through various meditation practices, whether it's simply just walking around and being mindful, or actually sitting down, being more traditional about it. Either way, whatever meditation practice you can use, I think is helpful to understand yourself. And like I said earlier, when we can understand ourselves more, I think we will find the world makes more sense.
That's super healthy. A lot of people are cynical and they feel the need to complain and not take any action. And you're being so kind and so zen and so positive and wonderful, and taking action and finding things that are fulfilling to you and going after them. So thank you for everything. I'm really excited to put this podcast out there, and I look forward to hopping into some coalition meetings. I see one's coming up July 11th. So thank you. And I'm going to hit send now. Hey, so I wanted to say that I invited Aaron to come talk on my show, and I hadn't been around him in years and years, and I was really nervous to interview him. I admire him so much, and when he was due to come to my office, I started getting a little panicky and a little bit nervous, and then he showed up, and he started by giving me a big hug, and I felt myself calming down right away. So thank you so much, Aaron. You made it easy for me. And I had so much fun talking with you. And I want to say thanks for all you're doing. Thank you for being such a good role model to us in San Luis Obispo and beyond. And I think you're a great role model for my girls. And I hope that our listeners will check your store out at the Gold Concept downtown. I love supporting businesses in San Luis Obispo, and I know so many people that love going to your store. And if you're interested, check out his website. All these really neat pieces are featured on the Gold Concept website. Check out the books he talked about, check out the movie, and write us and let us know what you think about them. You can put it on my episode page on the website. And yeah, be kind to yourself, be kind to your family, be kind to Mother Earth, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye, guys.